Hi, Kat Chancellor with Stamp Art Connection. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and I wanted to show you a card I made using one of the stamp sets out of the new Find Your Inspiration catalog. If you saw my video, I did all my unwrapping of all my pre-order items, so I've been sitting here playing with them. And the one I wanted to start out with was this one set called Sitting Here. And I made a card, you can see this, with using that stamp set, and this is actually fussy cut out with the little kitten stamped on the bench, and then the little pot of flowers fussy cut. I didn't start out like this. I actually was trying to put a little bird up here on the top of the bench, and it got messed up. So, like I always say, there are no real mistakes. You can always save your work, and it can turn into something fabulous. So I just cut it out, and I stuck it on a nice piece of designer series paper that came out of the Occasions catalog that had some kind of blue marbling, so it looked like a sky. And I put some jute yarn to kind of look like the strings that are holding up the little bench, and I was really happy with how it turned out. But what I want to show you today is how you can make this card, and we're going to use watercolor paper. We're going to stamp on watercolor paper. We're going to color it in, and we're going to do some cut some pretty pillows to kind of put on our bench. And I really liked this sentiment that I found on one of our other stamp sets that said, "Somehow God knew I needed a friend just like you." Really nice sentiment. So what are you going to need? Well, you're going to need some watercolor paper. You're going to need a piece of pear pizzazz that I went ahead and cut to frame my watercolor paper. And you're going to need a couple of pieces of small piece of pear pizzazz, and I just used, I guess this would be saffron yellow, just a nice yellow because we're going to make our pillows pop. So let's talk about stamping on using the photopolymer inks and the photopolymer stamp on this block. Photopolymer works really well if you stamp using the stamping piercing mat that Stampin' Up! Has. And I have that here. I'm going to lay that down. And the reason why is because it kind of gives it some cush that your rubber stamps already have. And to protect my stamping pierce mat, I just took some of my Stampin' Up! Paper and I cut it into fourths, and it makes a nice little cover to protect it. The other thing, because these are photopolymer stamps, and I'm going to use Stampin' Up! Archival ink because I want to watercolor, and this is a water-fast ink. It will not bleed. You don't want to use Memento if you're going to use watercolor or put any kind of coloring, is that your stamp is going to discolor. So if it doesn't mean it's going to change how it will perform, it's just going to discolor. So I did a couple of stamps because I was trying to kind of get an idea of how to explain this to you. And what I learned is that you really need to ensure that your pad is nice and juicy. I really tried to ink up this pad and or ink up the stamp with the pad when I first opened it up, and I could tell that no matter how much pressure I put on the paper, it really didn't take. This was a fresh inked pad. You can tell that it came out really well. I do have a couple of spots that I could certainly take care of with some kind of stamp, but I just wanted to show you the difference between a nice freshly inked pad and a regular pad. So I'm going to demonstrate that here. I'm going to open up my archival ink in black. I'm also, I've got some extra pieces of my watercolor paper, okay? Because it may not come out so great the first time, and that's okay. I use watercolor paper from Michaels, and I use the smooth side. There's a rough side, and there's a smooth side. And I go ahead and I use the smooth side. The reason why I use the Michaels watercolor paper is because when I do workshops, I go through a lot of watercolor paper, and it's just more economical for me to do it that way. Okay, so kind of stamped up or inked up my stamp. I'm going to go ahead and put my thing right here. Okay, just lay it down, gently press it. It should be nice and juicy, so I should have a nice black image. Oh, crap. See, didn't quite make it. So what am I going to do? I'm actually going to turn it around. I'm going to try it on this side. Okay, so let's do it again. This is the rougher side, but it should work just as good. I'm going to press. Kind of let that ink absorb into the paper. Okay, much better. But I do have a little white side, and I don't like that. I don't like this rough side, so I'm not going to use that. And I'm not going to go back, and I'm not going to edit my video because this is what it's all about: showing you how to do something, understanding that sometimes you're not going to get it right the first time, but you know, don't give up. It's worth it. Alright, so I stamped it, I inked it up again. I'm kind of using the corner of my stamp pad to make sure I get that middle section. Okay. And here we go again. This time, I think I'm going to kind of stand up a little because I want to make sure I get this correct. Alright, so now I'm going to stand. Just put some pressure on it. My thumbs. I hope this works. Ah, perfect. Okay, 2 tries. 2 tries and we got a perfect image. All right? So that is my archival ink. And right now I'm going to take my Stays On, and I'm just going to kind of put this on my stamp and just let it sit there while I take, over here I have all my stamps lined up. I'm going to take my flower pot. I'm going to ink that up. I'm going to put my flower pot right here. Same thing. Perfect. Okay. That's all I really want inked up using the archival ink. And again, this is how I clean my pads. This is my Stampin' Up! Stays On cleaner. I go ahead and I ink it up, and I put a wet towelette so that it can absorb that cleaner like that. And then I just kind of scrub it a little. I'm a little OCD about my stamps. I do like them clean. So that's probably why it kind of bothers me a little bit that they stain, but it doesn't mean it, you know. like I said, it's not that they won't perform. They won't perform any better or any worse. I just like to have a clean stamp. So, pardon my OCD. But, okay, so clean my stamps. I'm just going to go set them over here. You see, that's really, oh, that gets really grungy, but oh well. Okay, so now that I have a really nice stamped image, and I'm going to kind of make sure that it, it sets there a while and it's going to dry. I'm going to move my other papers aside, and I'm going to take out, I did my chair with soft suede. Now there's a couple of ways you could do this. You could do it with pencils. I'm going to do it with the with using the pad, and you just go ahead and squeeze your pad. You got nice. There's lots of pigment right there. I use the I forgot what these are called, but you can get these Stampin' Up. The watercolor pens, and I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit of the color, and hopefully you can see this. I'm just going to go ahead and run that along all my base of my chair, and along the back of my chair, and all my struts going down. And it's watercolor, so it's going to sometimes have, it's going to be thicker in some areas and thinner in others, and that's really, or darker rather, in some areas than others, and that's okay. In fact, you want to kind of take advantage of that. Here you see my chair. I probably want to put a little bit more darkness here in the corner because the shadow of the little of the cushion is showing, or is leaning over that. So, may want to just darken that a little bit. So you can see how that kind of shows a little bit of a shadow. I may want to darken just a tad right underneath, again, where there might be just a little bit of shadow. And you can see how I did that. I darkened right in there. Okay? Alright, so I'm done with that. I'm going to use a baby wipe, and I'm going to clean my pen. I'm going to squeeze it a little bit so some of that water comes out, and then I'm just going to kind of pinch it so that I have it nice and clean. Alright, so that is my bench. Now, it's watercolor. It's still wet. So I don't want to go and start working around the same area until that's dry. So I'm going to pick another area to work on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the pot, the bottom of the pot. And anything earthen, an earthen pot for me is going to be Cajun Craze. Nice kind of orange, orange color. I'm just going to squeeze my pad, open it up, get my ink, and I'm going to go ahead and just put some I'm not going to push any extra water. All I want to do is just cover it just initially. Okay, you can use a corner of a tissue if there is a lot of water on your image, and I kind of dab it a little bit. It gets the water out, but there you can see there's my little pot. Without using too much water, I may want to add a little bit of more shadow, and that simply is as easy as just kind of, I touched a little bit more of that side there. So now I've got some interest where it really looks like that pot's got a shadow there. So it really makes it look 3D. Hey, you're back with Cat Chancellor, and we're using our watercolors to paint our bench. And it's been a few minutes. This is pretty much dried out, so is that. So the next thing I want to do is I want to take I'm going to use one of my new colors, the Dapper Denim. And let's see. I've got just a little bit of pigment there. And how I'm going to do this is, if you notice that these are stripes, so I'm going to start at the front of the cushion, and I'm going to go ahead and color in my stripes, leaving every other one white. Okay? See how I did that? Every other one, fill in a little block. Every other one is white. All right. So now I'm going to take my blue and I'm going to follow where the blue meets the other stripe. I'm going to carry that back. So where the blue, right, meets my block, I'm going to carry that back so I now have my stripe perfectly aligned on my cushion. Again, it doesn't have to. Your watercolor is going to be, um, it's going to be more intense in other areas. You can go back and just kind of add a little bit more pigment by just touching very carefully. And then you get that nice striped cushion with your Dapper Denim. Okay? All right, so since we're, again, working with our bench, we want to make sure that dries. So we don't want to mess with that for a few minutes. And what we're going to do is we're going to go work on our pot. I'm going to use these in colors, and I think I'm going to use my markers because it's very intricate, and I'll have a lot more luck if I can use the little brush points and kind of just going to kind of touch and do my green leaves. And now this is it's just a matter of coloring it in. Okay. And it's kind of small, so you really have to, not sure if my glasses are even helping. You really have to kind of get in there. See that? The green leaves? Okay. I'm going to use my Peekaboo Peach along the flowers that are kind of hanging on the edge here. Kind of light. I'm then going to use my, my flamingo, flirty flamingo for some of my big flowers here. I just think that's going to be pretty. And my, what the heck is this one? Sweet sugar plum. And that really comes out nice. So using my using the watercolor to do the bench, and then these markers really give you a really nice effect. You can see that. See that? Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is, I don't know if you noticed, but right here it looks like it's kind of bleeding, and that happened on my other card as well. Kind of bled. So what I did is I used this ground stamp, and which I have right here. I used this ground stamp, and I used it right in the corner using my Memento. Remember, this is not the Color Fast one. And I just put it right here in the edge and where it bled, and it just kind of covers that up a little bit. Perfect. I've got my stamping cleaner right there. Cover up my Memento. And there you go. See, isn't that nice? All right. So now I'm going to leave, I guess you could color the ropes. I'm just going to kind of leave them alone. I kind of like how they look. I'm really liking how that blue and white kind of came out. So now I'm going to take my Pear Pizzazz and my yellow, and I'm going to use my 2 pillows. And this time I'm going to do my, I'm going to do a long pillow, and I'm going to take my Memento ink because that's, and I'm going to stamp, clean, put back. I'm going to take my round pillow, Memento ink. I'm going to turn this around because I want to use all my paper. I don't like to waste my paper. Perfect. Clean. Okay. And then I'm going to take my sentiment, which is, somehow God knew I need a friend just like you. Stamp that up with my Memento ink. I'm going to put that right here. Perfect. Clean my stamp. And I'm going to fussy cut my pillows. really like this. I really like this stamp set, and more importantly, I kind of like the feeling, the type of card that this stamp makes. Okay, so I have my two pieces. Okay, so I can pop them both up, or I think I'm going to pop them both up. So I'm going to take my dimensionals because I'm going to just do something different. I'm going to pop up one side of this guy, and I'm going to put him right here. And if you'll notice, there's a little bit of shadow on the bottom of that. So that probably goes on the bottom. And then I'm going to pop my other stamp set up using my stamping dimensionals, my other little pillow, and put it over here. And again, I'm going to use kind of shaded down there, so that's probably the bottom of my pillow. And there you go. Isn't that cool? So I'm going to go ahead and find my oh, here it is, my Paper Pizzazz. Put my card, mount my card on the Paper Pizzazz, and then I'm going to mount it on a 5.5 by 5.5 by 4.25 is my white Whisper White cardstock. So I will make sure that I put my measurements on my video while I edit it, but there it is. Look at that. Easy, breezy. You've got all the steps now. You can pick your colors. I hope this is one of your favorites in the catalog, and that you will, if you order it, you'll have fun doing it. I've really enjoyed it. It was my first pick. I've got some other ideas that I'd like to work with, and I'll post them on my Stamp Art Connection website. But hope I get to see some of your creations as well. So this is Kat Chancellor. Thank you very much for watching my video.